Welcome, everybody. And I'm so excited for you to be here on our session today of disruption and reinvention of media and entertainment. I'm Eric Iverson, pronouns he and him, and I'm the CTO for Media and Entertainment here at AWS. Today, I'm real excited to take you on this journey about where we've been in media entertainment. So we're going to start with some trends in media entertainment and kind of what's driving us forward, and then talk about our offering of AWS for media and entertainment. The journey for media entertainment has been pretty exciting for quite a long time. So while a lot of us jumped early on in 2006 when we became pioneers into the cloud together, that journey quickly started to accelerate in 2008 when Netflix decides to go all in on the cloud. And what did this journey kind of have in stock for us? Well, if you look forward with so many customers, so many partners over those years, we ended up doing a lot of invention together. And what did that give us from a cloud point of view? That gave us the most functionality with over 200 core services today, the fastest pace of innovation with over 2,757 innovations last year in 2020 alone, the most proven operational expertise, the most secure cloud. Security is a major priority for us here at AWS, and we want to make sure that that content stays secure all the way the moment it's being created, all the way through that consumer experience. And the largest community of customers with over 1 million active customers, and the largest community of partners with over 100,000 partners on the partner network. But continuing on in that journey, not only did we have the core capabilities of the cloud, we knew that we needed some purpose-built capabilities for media entertainment. So in 2015, you saw the acquisition of Elemental, today now AWS Elemental. And then in 2017, the acquisition of ThinkBox really focused in on rendering and making sure that we could help with the visual effects and animation studios. So when you look forward, what that gave us is not only the 200 core services, but a part of those 200 core services, some really focused media and entertainment capabilities, including Amazon Interactive Video Services, those Elemental core services to help us kind of encode, package, and deliver, as well as ThinkBox and some of the core services that we would need to help with those VFX studios. And that brings me to a very exciting announcement that we made just a few months ago, which is Amazon Nimble Studio. This particular service brings together 50 AWS services to make it much easier for you to be able to deploy an entire VFX studio right from the cloud and be able to do this in minutes instead of hours or days. Really incredible step forward to make it much easier for creators to get on with creating and take the really difficult part of figuring out how to do some of these very complex workloads for creative engineers. So what has that given us too? If we have this great history, we have all these great core services, well, you get further with friends in life. And what we're so excited about is the tremendous amount of partners we have in the partner network that we work with today, with more than 400 AWS partners in media and entertainment alone. And that includes some really great partners like Adobe, Autodesk, Dolby, Deluxe, Epic Games, Grass Valley, Evertz, Imagine Communications, Slalom, Sony Media Cloud Services, Trackit, Teradici, and Wizeline. Just a tremendous lineup, and that's just to name just a few. All just incredibly great partners, and we just love innovating with you every day. That also brings us to this largest customer community, and many of you see some of these as household names, and some of them are companies like Comcast and Discovery and Disney. These are just tremendous innovators. Eurosport, Formula One, HBO Max, Fox, MGM, the NFL, Netflix, and CBS Viacom, who's going through tremendous change. And it's just incredible to be able to work with some of these, this large customer community. And as you've heard from us over and over again, it's really difficult to be able to compress experience. And so being able to work with this incredible customer base is driven a lot of our innovation. And while we've moved forward with a lot of innovation, there's a lot to go. We have a lot of work ahead of us. Many of you have probably experienced as consumers this tremendous amount of change that we're seeing in the marketplace. And one of them is all of our demand for more content. We want more content coming from more places faster. I don't know about you, but I like to binge watch. And by the time I get done binge watching a few episodes on a series, I'm pretty sad sometimes that I can't keep going. And that's this new demand that we have to not only get more content, but be able to tell those stories that kind of meet us, as well as be able to do it faster. And so that's driven a lot of innovation and thinking on how we're going to actually drive that faster and move those processes forward more quickly. The next is on supply chain and archive. So while we're making all this content, we've actually made a lot of more content that we have to track and manage. And sometimes that a lot of this is ending up on tape and tape libraries, which are not very accessible and are costly to access, and they're susceptible to data loss, as well as being able to have much more durable supply chains to be able to move this content that we're creating more quickly, faster through. And where are we trying to move it to? We're trying to move it to direct-to-consumer and streaming experiences. We're expecting more personalized content. We're moving it into broadcast, where we're watching a lot of news and live sports. And those broadcast workflows need to be able to do both traditional broadcast as well as digital. And so we're trying to move this content through the supply chain faster and out to more endpoints, and doing that more places in the world. And that's going to driven some more demand and more challenges in there as far as kind of cost of operations. And lastly, that brings us to analytics. When you're moving this much content through and you're trying to reach so many audiences in so many places and doing a great job of it, it just created an exponential amount of data, and it's created a tremendous demand for us to be able to look at that data, analyze it, make sense of it, and actually produce better content, make better decisions along the way, and be able to present that out to you as a consumer. And I know that you want that just as much as I do. So if this is the what we need to accomplish and the why we need to do it, we like to think of AWS for Media and Entertainment as the how. And so this is our how, as far as how we're going to be able to continue to move forward and co-innovate with our customers and our partners moving forward. And that's what AWS for Media Entertainment is. So let's take that into kind of the 5 core areas that when we think about AWS for Media Entertainment, what does that mean? There's these 5 core solution areas that require a lot of core innovation today. The first one is content production. These are workloads that have for basically the last 20 years we've looked at as candidates to be able to kind of reinvent themselves and move to the cloud. And that's been a hard journey. But today, and over the last couple of years, we've been able to start to unlock what the future of content production looks like. We'll talk about that. And the second is media supply chain and archive. But as you could hear, we're going to try to be able to move this content around a lot more. We're going to have to really focus on being able to be super efficient and be able to get content in more places. Broadcast, direct to consumer and streaming, and data science and analytics for media. So let's dive into each one of these a little bit more. So the first is trends in content production. As we talked about just a few minutes ago, you and I, we all want fresh content. We want it exclusive. We want it to be more diverse. And we're going to have a requirement to be able to kind of meet that demand, and as well as our customers are dealing with that today. Second is the reduction of time and being able to compress the production lifecycle so that we can get that content more efficiently created and get that out further out into the pipeline. And the third is using techniques of remote and virtual production to be able to serve the global workforce so that we can be able to find talent and work with talent in more places. And that in and of itself is one of the major things that we would do to actually help us with diverse content, which is something that I know that we all want. So what is it that we're seeing? So starting with the customers at the bottom of this page and working up, we've been able to work with great customers to be able to help with this. Customers such as Method Studios, who has just done tremendous work over the last year in thinking and rethinking about how do we be able to support editorial processes and be able to do those remotely. One of the ones that I love that they did is the work that they did in helping with Winnie the Pooh. And who doesn't love Winnie the Pooh out there? But be able to move some of those workloads for rendering out and move that onto the cloud provided them tremendous flexibility in being able to get talent in more places. That's very similar to what Weta Digital has been doing with some of the visual effects work that they do with some of the industry-leading works in visual effects that they're all well known for. And in Untold Studios, what a great story. This is the story of a creative studio that has decided from day one that they want to be able to tell all of their stories directly from the crowd and be able to find talent wherever they can find it and not be constrained with a physical studio. And that's what they set out to do, and that's exactly what they did. And today, if you look at some of the projects they do and things like being able to support The Crown, they could find resources from multiple different countries to be able to come together, find the best talent, be able to spin up creative workstations for them in minutes and be able to do that. And last, I'll talk about MotoGP, who has been able to use the power of remote production in sports and live motorsports, which is really great in being able to see to change the game. We've seen that from other customers too, which is really exciting, and being able to provide a lot more flexibility to people being able to work on these productions. And who are we doing that with? We have over 40 partners in our partner network that really focus on the workloads that we have here in production. And some of those I mentioned already earlier today with Autodesk and Epic Games and Teradici, who are really doing some of the next generation work, especially like in virtual production and remote workloads. And we're going to see a lot more of that. And what are some of the examples of some of the work that we've done inside of AWS? Well, that's taking things like VFX and be able to do burst rendering and be able to provide frameworks to be able to do that. And you see that with some of the tools and tooling that we've had coming out of our VFX teams, as well as being able to have those VFX workstations on AWS. And of course, one of the great tools and services that we've just offered out is, of course, up in the upper right-hand corner here with Amazon Nimble Studios, where you could, again, launch the entire Nimble Studio process in the cloud and be able to work on those workloads. But in addition to that, we have other tools in our tool belt there. Everything from the render farm deployment kits that we make available to be able to make it more easy to bring those up. ThinkBox Deadline to help you manage that. And of course, Elemental, both live and media live, to be able to acquire content from location and bring it up, whether you need to do it on in the cloud to begin with, or you need kind of help bringing it up from your on-prem data centers. So next, let's talk about what you could do to learn more about content production. And we have these 4 great resources out there. I highly recommend. I've been through every one of them. Content production on AWS. Here's the links, and you'll be able to get them after the presentation today. Highly recommend deep dive on Amazon Nimble Studios and see the really great work and the things that you could do. I'm sure that you're going to be tempted to actually go out and create your own creative studio once you get a chance to dive into that. Get a chance, definitely go do a double click into that and see some of those studio partners. Again, remember 50 AWS services are a part of that, as well as some real critical partners that all require to come together to make it much easier to launch that. And then getting started on with video editing in the cloud and what Cloud Edit can look like. And if you double click into that, you can see exactly what's required to actually spin that up and get yourself going. So let's get into our next set of trends, which is, now that we have this content, we need to move it forward in the supply chain. And so we have some real key challenges here for storage and processing and rights management that we have to deal with. And so there's these 3 big trends that we see there. First of all, we have this growing archive of all this content that we talked about. Second is that we're trying to get it into many more places around the world. So we have this international distribution, and that's driving a lot of localization work that we need to do. Last is that we have to focus on durability. What does that mean? If we're moving this much content to so many endpoints, it's got to work, and we have to trust it. And those operational workflows are something that we have to really make sure that we can trust in our day-to-day operations. And who's doing that? Well, we see customers like Deluxe doing that. We see customers like Discover, who's decided to move their workloads over into the cloud and be able to help them move forward with the media supply chain pieces first, so they can then move on to how they're kind of transforming from broadcast to broadcast plus digital. And you've seen that with some of the great launches that they've had over this last year. In fact, some of the work that we've done with Discovery has also helped us to collectively win an Emmy for some of the work that we've done in media supply chain. Nippon TV, love the work, again, that they've been doing, both to be able to focus on kind of how broadcast meets digital and bring those things into kind of a single media supply chain workflow over time. And Viacom CBS, who is been very well read here in the press as far as the tremendous transformation that they've been doing, bringing those 2 companies together, going cloud first, and reinventing those media supply chain workloads. Just tremendous work with there. And who are we working with? We have more than 80 partners that are working with us in media supply chain. This is just such a great area for reinvention. Delet, SDVI, and Telestream are just 3 really great partners of innovators that have been doing this for many, many, many years. And we love working with them, as well as many others in our partner network. When you look at some of the solutions that we've done, there's some great solutions that are available just using a collection of some of the core primitive AWS services that we have today. Media to Cloud, where you could actually tremendously improve the process and the long-term ability to track your data by being able to have tools in place to allow you to track, index, and label some of that data on the way in. AWS Content Analysis that allows you to look inside to some of that content while you're doing an ingestion of it. And the last is serverless fixity for digital preservation, being able to use your choice of checksum for that, be able to go in and check and make sure that you feel comfortable and you're able to prove your compliance for digital archive long term. And what do we rely upon as far as core services for that? Well, we just have to start with Amazon S3. What a great core service that's been with us from the very beginning. And everything we do in media relies on rock solid 11 nines of durability for storage. But in addition to that, what's so powerful about the cloud is having these additional options on your storage. So being able to move some of that storage requirement down to Glacier when you don't need the real-time availability, and be able to put it on less expensive storage, and then being able to use other tools like Amazon Rekognition and Elemental Media Convert and other tools in the Elemental tool suite to be able to package and transform that content along the road. And you can learn a lot more about this. Again, some great resources. Highly recommend that you go in and look at these. Media Supply Chain and Archive on AWS Media to Cloud, such a great service. That content analysis that we talked about in serverless fixity that we also mentioned. So let's get into our next trend. Our next trend is going to be in the area of broadcast. And first of all, I think everyone's seen this. We're making a relatively tectonic shift with what's happening in broadcast and direct to consumer and the way that we all consume content. And broadcasters who have been doing this are experts in this. Tremendous companies have been doing this for years. They're making this pivot with us, and we're working with them today to do that. And they just need to be able to get some of the great programming they've been doing for many years and get that onto more platforms and be able to retain that consumer attention in more places. So that's kind of the first thing that they're focused on. The second is that we see this kind of shift from hardware to software. And I've seen this take place in so many good ways these days, where you're able to pivot and experiment and be able to have that agility instead of being locked into kind of one broadcast data center, being able to move workloads, spin up channels, transform your channels, and have that agility to be able to move your resources and use those dollars as best you can as we're in the middle of this broadcast transformation. And the third, which is to continue to be able to experiment with the changing consumer demands. And we'll talk a little bit more of that and some of the great work that we've seen with customers in viewing experiences when it comes to live sports. So those are some of the things that we see as trends. And what's that leading to? That's leading to really exciting work with multiple companies, including the BBC, who also is making transformation between digital and the work that they're doing, not only to have the live broadcast, but especially supporting those digital workloads. ITV, who now can actually spin up for their digital environments, their entire environment in 28 minutes. From soup to nuts, their entire infrastructure. Really great story. Fox, who's been leading the way in transformation. I highly recommend you go look at some of the stories on our website as far as the Fox use cases. Just great innovators and the work that they've done ever since they have become kind of the new Fox organization. And the Korean Broadcast Service, who again has used the cloud to really help them transform and be able to have that agility to be able to move in their marketplace. We have over 20 great partners that we're working with to help work with these customers. They include Amagi, Evertz, Grass Valley, Imagine. These are great innovative partners that we have. And some of the great examples that we see that are very visual, certainly around kind of real-time live sports updates. And many of you are probably seeing that and experiencing that in some of the live sports broadcasts that you've seen. One of the ones I just want to call out on core services is the AWS Cloud Digital Interface, smack there in the middle. This is a great service that I think is going to have transformational effect on our broadcast industry. Fox has been helping to lead the way with that, is one of the real innovators in our space. And this is the ability to have uncompressed video move through the cloud. So think about the fact that we can go from ground into the cloud and then begin to do distribution through the cloud. And to be able to do that reliably and at high throughput with low latency is an incredible advancement. And we're just at the beginning of how we're going to be able to use that over the next 2 years. I'm excited to even come back to talk to you more about it this coming year and the year after as we continue to move down that journey. Other examples of great innovations we see there: statistical multiplexing, the ability to maximize your signal by being able to use stats to be able to make sure that you're actually putting your bits where they matter most on the content that's moving the most, and not using up some of the bandwidth just on images that are not changing. And of course, we wouldn't be anywhere without the Elemental stack. Elemental Live, being able to help deal with live content and getting those feeds into the cloud, Media Connect, and Elemental Media Live, which we talked about earlier as well. And there's more great resources on this as well. I highly recommend taking some time on these. There's a whole broadcast transformation ebook. Highly recommend that. Live Sports e-magazine, go sign up. Me Magazine, go sign up. This will just take a minute for you today. And then there's a great article blog out there on Broadcast on AWS. So that brings us into kind of our last trend area. And I don't know about you, but I love data, and data is such a great area, and that's one of the things that is going to be driving our experiences in direct-to-consumer and streaming. And so we're going to talk about this with some of the things that we see in these trends. So the first one is if you're in the direct-to-consumer business, you've gone to having a one-to-one relationship with your consumer. And in this particular case, what we need to do is help our customers acquire new customers globally, drive that engagement, and reduce churn. Well, how are you going to do that? You need to have a lot more insights about your customer. The second trend that we see is that drive to streamline operations and basically accelerate the innovation they're doing. There's two reasons for that. One is the move to direct-to-consumer has happened so quickly. Just think of the last 18 months alone, or the last 2 years alone, where for many years we've had great innovators like Hulu and Netflix, but now it's Disney Plus, it's Peacock, it's HBO Max, it's Discovery Plus. We're having so much more choice there, and we've moved so quickly that there's now this opportunity to streamline those operations. And why do we want to do that? Because we're looking to make, acquire, and localize differentiating experiences and content in more places of the world. So if we're going to do that, we need to be able to do that at scale. So these are three big things that are driving us there. We have great partners in direct-to-consumer. Those include Canal Plus for the French market, Disney Plus, of course, but Hotstar, who's actually set the record for the most number of concurrent streams, Netflix, which is a continuous innovator in this space, Peacock, who is not only doing innovation on direct-to-consumer, was able to kind of launch in a year, which was incredible, but also is driving some of the thinking that we're seeing in kind of not only the subscription VOD markets, but also in the AVOD markets, the advertising supported VOD. We're doing this with a great number of partners, so 50 plus partners. Some of those partners include Evergent, Erdetto, that helps us on the security side, Kaltura for people that want more of a complete solution. And if you look up some of the work that we've done internally, we have things like the Media Services Application Mapper to help us make it easier to put some of these solutions together. Live streaming on AWS, which is a great core service, and video demand on AWS. Again, ways for us to move more quickly with some of the core services that we need. And of course, at the top of the stack, in addition to some of the core services that we talked about earlier today, you have things like Amazon CloudFront for CDN, and AWS Elemental Media Services, and one of my favorite other new services that came from Twitch, Amazon Interactive Video Services, and another great one I encourage you to go check out. Our last year, we have some great references here for you to go check out in direct-to-consumer and streaming. So first of all, you got to check out some of these blogs here we have on the AWS Media blog, the AWS Media Service Application Mapper, direct-to-consumer and streaming on AWS, and AWS Media Services. So definitely please read more all about that. And then our last area is in the area of data science. So kind of what we talked about with direct-to-consumer and streaming, data is at the core of just about everything we do today. You heard its important role there, and there's a reason for that. With so much content coming at us today, we need to help consumers be able to find their content much more easily across platforms. We need to understand what those consumers actually want and have a full round trip in that experience and make sure that we're actually producing the kind of content that they need. And so being able to understand, measure, and optimize that consumer experience, be able to get that as a feedback loop so that we could produce and acquire relevant content. This is the magic recipe for helping any of the major players that we have in media and entertainment across the board. So if you look at some of the customers that we've been helping on that, and I'm going to pick on two that are very visual. So if you want, I would encourage you after the presentation today, go check out Formula One. If you haven't watched Formula One, and see how that fan experience has been changed by introducing data stats, and analytics right on screen. It's so great to be able to have that additional data to enhance the storytelling. And you've also seen that with other customers like the NFL that have been able to show what the probability is of making a catch. You see similar kinds of things with Second Spectrum, who have been doing that in basketball. And again, I highly recommend you go checking out and see what is now possible by improving the fan experience by bringing data and analytics right into the viewing experience. We also have other great companies like Nielsen, who has been in the data and measurement game since day one, as well as The Guardian, who is also being able to use this in how you transform and look at the publishing industry. We have 10 plus great partners that work with us in data science that are very focused on media and entertainment. And that includes EPAM, Gray Meta, and Veritone, great partners of ours. And then there's these, in addition to some of the services that we use, the solutions that we use for media supply chain, we also have AWS Media Insights Engine, which allows you to go in and pull even more insights out using some of the other core services like Rekognition and Transcribe, media intelligence, and predictive user engagement solution offerings. Highly recommend to go and take a look at those. We have 15 purpose-built database services out there, and this gives you kind of the flexibility to combine with analytic services and machine learning services to really build out the analytic AI, ML overall offering in your own company. And we're seeing that in media entertainment. We're using that all the time. And you could read more about that in some of the blogs that we have, the ebook that we have out there. I highly recommend you go in and look at that AWS Media Insights Engine, as well as analytics on AWS. So with that, I really want to thank you for joining us here today and learning a little bit about more of the hard work we're doing in media entertainment. And I think for any of you out there that are lovers of the entertainment industry like I am, you've seen the transformation that's happening. You're in some ways, you're a part of it. And so I encourage you to go get curious and learn a little bit more about how maybe this applies to you and your workloads in your company. And really would love it if you please complete the session survey today. We loved having you. Thank you very much.